Hey there, my name's Jacob. I'm 21 and I want to tell you about the one time I tried to be brave and do some Baywatch heroics, only to turn around and get sued by the girl I tried to save. So early last summer, I decided to take a summer trip with my friends to Montego Bay. It was my first time spending summer anywhere rather than at home. But as a surfer, I decided to expand my surfing experience and explore the alien waves. Besides, it was a great chance to finally rave a new city, especially because I was finally legal. 21, baby! The trip included myself, Warren and Jasper, my two childhood buddies, and their girlfriends. Knowing that I'd be a third wheeler, I planned all the activities and made sure we always were with other people, whether at clubs or parties, in a bid to mingle and maybe find a date to help me get out of the third wheeler club. Surfing the next day was amazing. We met the local surfers and even gave some surfing lessons to the fellow surfers at the beach. But something incredible happened. I saw the biggest wave I've ever seen in my life from a distance. As you'd expect, I ran back into the water with my board to ride this giant wave. As I was riding it, I saw her. She was about 6 feet away from me. She rode the wave so majestically, with the breeze blowing her hair and the water touching her skin. I was so fixated on watching her that I fell off my board in astonishment. I had never fallen off my board in the last 3 years. After crashing into the water, I came back up and couldn't find her. I got back to the beach to ask my friends, but they hadn't seen her either. So saddened, I continued with the rest of my day. The surfers later entertained us, invited us to a party that night. We decided to check out some of the restaurants in town, and after that, I suggested that we visit an antique store so we could get souvenirs. After we bought what we needed, we had to go back to prepare for the party. Warren and Jasper had second thoughts on partying that night because they claimed to be tired and wanted to rest. But the girlfriends and I protested, and finally we had the final word. We went back to the hotel to freshen up before going back to the beach for the party. The scenery was beautiful. There were bonfires, and the locals were all dressed up. There were so many activities happening there, from games to cliff jumping to glow-in-the-dark paintings on people's bodies. We were having a great time, and I left the couples by the bar to go dance by the bonfire. That's when I saw her again, looking as majestic as she was in the water, even when she's so close to fire. I approached her, and we shared a dance and chatted over drinks from the bar. She then suggested we go cliff jumping. I liked that she was very adventurous. I had never gone cliff jumping before, but the alcohol and the desire to impress Viviana boosted my confidence. We eagerly went over to the cliff, and one by one we dived into the water. Once we were all in, from a distance we could hear shouts of distress, muffled screams, and frantic splashing of water. The surfer instinct in me propelled my body forward on the water, and I swam as fast as I could. I saved her. And as soon as we all got to the shore, someone performed CPR on her, while another person called an ambulance. My gang had rushed to the scene, and as soon as the ambulance arrived, I decided to join it, while my friends went back to the hotel to wait for me. I made sure she was admitted and safe before leaving her at the hospital. I dropped my information at the nurse's desk because she was still unconscious before going back to the hotel. Viviana called in to check up on me as soon as I returned, and I set up a date with her the next day. Viviana and I met up for lunch at a nice restaurant close to the hotel. She was very impressed with my heroic act the night before and mentioned it at almost every second. I was just pleased that she thought highly of me. After I finished my date with Viviana, I met up with my friends, and we hit the waves again. I had wanted to visit the mysterious girl, but my friends had advised against it, their reason being that it was rather too soon and that we should wait until evening. Immediately I got back to the hotel. Though I passed out, I was exhausted. The next day, I woke up to a subpoena. I was confused. My friends and I went to the courthouse, and I realized that the girl I had saved had sued me. The news didn't go down well with me. The girl wasn't at the courthouse, so we decided to come back the following day. The whole day, I was uneasy, and during dinner with Viviana, I was uncomfortable. I didn't know if to share the news with her. I decided not to, in order not to jeopardize my chances with her. Unknown to my crew, the news of the subpoena had spread, and most people on the beach already heard the whole story before we even got to the courthouse. Viviana called me early enough, before we went to the courthouse, to interrogate me. She was very angry, and even asked me not to contact her again. I couldn't understand anything she said, and tried to calm her down, but she just wouldn't listen. Warren decided we should go to the beach and talk to the bartender, his newly made friend, before going to the courthouse. He insisted that we investigate the girl and have some background information on her to protect ourselves in case the whole subpoena was a setup. On getting to the bar at the beach, the barman filled in all the gaps. Apparently she had been with a guy that night, whom she had gone to cliff jump with. They swam towards deeper water, and she complained, but instead, the guy swam away once she didn't consent to his sexual advances. She obviously thought I was the same guy because the nurses had dropped my info and there wasn't anyone around to explain or tell her about everything that had transpired. We understood that her sentiments were misplaced. We wanted to explain everything to her personally, but a friend of ours from the hotel advised us to do so in the presence of a lawyer. We found the other guys who jumped the cliff with us, and they all backed up our story. We then went over to the courthouse and scheduled a meeting between both parties. The girl and her lawyer showed up for the meeting, and after much dialogue, we proved my innocence, and all charges were dropped. The girl did apologize profusely and was extremely embarrassed, but that didn't change the fact that I felt very uneasy during and after the whole scene. So Warren suggested we leave soon after. We booked our flight and said our goodbyes to Montego Bay the very next day. Sadly, I couldn't catch Viviana to explain the whole thing to her, so I lost my crush because of a fake accusation. The whole story did seem hilarious to our parents and our friends back home, but it still makes me uneasy. Instead of attending parties and finding a +1, all I found was a lot of information on legal matters. Not a very cool way to end your summer. And that was my story. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to it. If you have a similar story, you can send it to the email down below. Take care and goodbye.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh and I can't feel cold, like at all. And no, I'm not the legendary Iceman that you sometimes see in a video about human superpower. I'm still a teenager. Because of this condition, strange things happened to me a lot. Once my parents were about to be deprived of their parental rights. I've had the so-called sickness since I was a kid. I can't stand the heat and the sun. I feel really bad. It's hard for me to breathe. My heart goes haywire. I have huge hives if I stay under the sun for a long time. But when it's cold, I feel just fancy. I was the only one who felt great. I could breathe deeply and not get sick at the wrong moment. But my new friends didn't share my passion, though they were used to such temperatures, and it was really cool. Skating, skiing, jogging on the fresh snow in the morning, what a pleasure. They started to shout at my parents, "Hey, your kid would get a cold." Mom had to quickly introduce my diagnosis and medical certificates to everyone. But they were still startling looking at the kid without a cap and a coat in such a climate. My parents are of Orthodox religion. On great religious holidays, we go to church and sometimes swim in the font. I don't know what it means, but again there was a real humdinger. Mom quickly took a dump in the font and went out, with goosebumps and shivering with cold, but I jumped in and started swimming. And no need for me to set me up for an angel. It was just my trait to swim in the cold water. Maybe I'm kind of bare, yeah? They seemed believing us, but we didn't go to this church anymore. But the commission scratched their heads. They started to sue over about depriving my parents of their parental rights. You know, they seemed like not caring about my health. And it started. My parents claimed I had a disease. That's why we moved to the north. In the heat, I feel bad and there's a risk for my life. But for some reason, no one listened to them. I was examined for a long time. My parents were forbidden to visit me till the end of the examinations. So we talked on the phone. We cried a lot, but having needled and x-rayed me to the bone, the doctors got we had been telling the truth. They gave me back to my parents. They didn't even say sorry. Anyway, I lost 3 months of life and a bunch of nerve cells. Now I feel sick seeing people wearing white. But I've become the star of our city and some cities nearby. Anyway, I'm glad it all ended well. Otherwise, I'd probably run away and come home on my own. But I learned a good lesson. First, adults can be stupid too, especially if they need a cause. And second, you shouldn't show you're exceptional. It can lead to backfire. So my parents bought me a cap anyway, and a coat too, though I got all the lining out. But anyway, I started looking like everyone else. And yeah, I don't go barefoot on the snow anymore. My neighbors know me. But explaining this to every stranger, I would run out of my nerves.